All right, live from Salt Lake City, this is Heart of the Matter, here with Ryan McKnight, part 3. It's been a fascinating walk, and if you haven't seen part 1 and 2, go back into the archives at hotm.tv, check them out because it's worth watching, and also to support what they're doing, because I think it's important for what is happening and what they have contributed to have happening. So Ryan has talked about growing up. He was LDS, strong LDS in the general sense. So was I, and here we are. I'm 20 years older than Ryan. I figured that out through my mathematical acumen. But we're both now with tats, beards, and this guy's sporting an earring.
Two.
Oh,
yeah.
I didn't see it.
Yeah.
So when did this transition come about?
I got my first tattoo Christmas of 16.
Nice. So that was right about the time, December.
Mormon Leaks, yeah, wow, yeah.
Awesome.
That's true. And second tattoo, Christmas of 17.
Nice.
And I haven't gotten any more, but they're coming.
Uh-huh. When did we add the...
This is
you only have one, so...
Well, I got the two.
The
two. This is kind of a recent, I guess some people are calling it a midlife crisis.
Oh, you're too young.
Last couple of months.
Months?
Yeah.
And have always been a bearded guy?
The beard's always come and gone, even when I was a member.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
That's a good sign.
But I've had a beard pretty much straight for a couple of years now.
Have you?
When I was a member, I'd have a beard for a month and I'd get tired of it, take it off, and goatee, and then take it off. And
in downtown Salt Lake, they have a secret society that I can't verify. It's probably a myth called the Beard Watch. And women in the Relief Society will go to restaurants and complain that their server's beard and to try to monitor the hair length on the face. It may be a big rumor. We should go to his group and find out if it's true or not. But in any case, so I want to do a little word association. I try to do this with our guests.
Oh boy.
And if there's ones you don't like,
all right, we'll see.
All right. Julia Assange.
Julian, oh my goodness.
Are you likened to him?
Unfortunately, yeah.
You don't like him.
I'm neutral.
Yeah.
I'm not an expert in his situation.
Yeah.
I think there's definitely some things about him that I don't like. But I don't necessarily think he's all bad.
Yeah.
But I for the most part, reject any comparison.
Okay. Yeah.
I realize that we brought that upon ourselves by calling the site Mormon Leaks and everything. And so I don't begrudge people for thinking of that.
Yeah.
But I do think that what we do is a little different. Yeah. Same, ball field, but, we're different planes.
Fair enough. At least there's an old guy who used to be on TV named Gene Scott, and he was a preacher, and he smoked a cigar, and he drew on a whiteboard, and he was insane. I get likened to him. Okay. So at least you have someone way up there you're getting likened to.
Yeah, I mean, it's...
Whatever it is.
I'm not going to be in prison anytime soon like he might be.
Right.
Whether that's, and I'm not saying I support that or not.
Yeah.
I think there's some issues there that need to be worked out when it comes to, freedom of speech and all that, but... Yeah, if people really got down to talk about what we do, the nitty gritty, I think they would find that there's not much similarity.
I see. When we talked about, you were in a private group years ago, and they were far right wing. Have you shifted in your?
Yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, I actually even started to shift politically before I left the church.
Okay.
In fact, it's funny because Mitt Romney started my political transition because I thought he was not conservative enough.
Whoa.
Yeah. I thought he was not a good Mormon. Because, he was very pro-choice when he was a governor in Massachusetts, and that bothered me greatly that he changed on a dime like that with no explanation.
Flip-flopper.
Well, especially because there's a video out there on YouTube that I had found at the time that really bothered me during his debates in Massachusetts for governor, where he not only came out as pro-choice, but he claimed that he has always been pro-choice and that his mother instilled that value in him.
Oh, wow.
That's a pretty powerful thing to say.
Yeah.
Like, if you're claiming that your mother raised you to be pro-choice and then all of a sudden you're not, and you're a Mormon, it didn't jive with me. I felt he was fake. And I started to then sort of become disillusioned with the Republican Party at that time. And during that election, for the first time, I didn't vote Republican.
Wow.
I didn't vote Democrat either. So I think that my progression towards the center or liberal side of things has sped up as I've left the church. And I consider myself to be very apolitical. I don't, I'm not a party line voter. Right now, I'm probably have more in common with Democrats, but I'm not like, people would probably be surprised at some of my more conservative thoughts. But on social issues, I'm a flaming liberal.
Yeah.
I could care less what bathroom you walk into, who you're sleeping with. Like, unless you're doing harm to somebody, I don't care.
Right.
So in that regards, what I end up finding happens is my conservative friends think I'm a flaming liberal, and my liberal friends think I'm a little too conservative. That's what ends up happening.
We're really similar. I don't care either at all. I consider myself apolitical, but I am fiscally more conservative.
Yeah, I'm probably somewhere in there too.
Yeah.
Although, look, because I'm a regulatory auditor, have that background. I'm not that anymore, but I'm not necessarily a big tax person, if you will. Yeah. So, in that sense, I suppose I'm much more fiscal. But I think taxes get a bad rap, and I don't think they're as bad as some of the more conservative people think they are.
Awesome. Russell M. Nelson.
Old.
He doesn't act like it. He's running all over the place.
I hope that I'm that way.
Yeah.
When I'm 95, or however old he is. Get that. I don't think so. I don't think so.
Old.
I did have a great grandmother who went to just shy to 100.
Whoa.
So maybe if I got some of her genes.
All right.
But
and then, since I'm on that one, what about the other guy, Thomas Monson?
Dementia. I think he was sold short.
Oh.
I don't believe he was treated with the dignity that he deserved in his later years.
Wow. You're a man of character. I didn't know that about you. You have principles, and you're not afraid to share them.
Oh, I try. I mean, I'm sure I have my flaws in that department.
I'm sure you do, but
I try.
It's really good. Okay, Mormonism.
Unfortunately, forever a part of me.
Yeah.
I wish it never happened.
Do you?
Some days.
Yeah.
But then I met my wife on my mission.
Yeah.
So.
It's kind of hard to.
It's hard.
Yeah.
Mormonism. I don't know, man.
Do you still wake up singing some of the songs?
No. No, I was never a singer. My biggest thing that I wake up thinking is, why couldn't I have figured it out sooner?
Do you have regret? Do you feel like you were dumb or duped? I hear that a lot.
Yeah, I had a switch. I've always been a critical thinker. Even when I was a member, I would debunk things, and I was interested in skepticism and debunking everything, other religions, psychics, all that. I loved it. But I never ever turned a skeptical eye to Mormonism. And all that critical thinking, now that I look back on it, I realize as soon as I walked through those doors of the church, it turned off. So it's...
what do you attribute that to?
Years of conditioning.
Sure. I mean, you can't help that.
Yeah. It's not my fault. I mean, I just wish I could have done those Google searches sooner. What can I do?
Yeah. I have to write these down or else I start Mormonism. Okay, God.
Means very little to me these days.
Means little. Is there one?
I have no proof, no reason to believe in one.
Sounds pretty atheistic.
Sure.
So would you consider yourself more agnostic?
Well, look, I reject the idea outright that you're either atheist or agnostic.
Okay.
I think that it's become pop culture to say I'm an agnostic because of the baggage that many Christians, and I'm not suggesting you're one of these because I don't know, But many Christians have created this baggage around the word atheism that people have gravitated to calling themselves agnostic. Atheism deals with belief. Theism and atheism.
Right.
Agnostic and Gnostic deal with knowledge. Now, if a God is presented to me, let's say the God of the Bible for lack of a better term, and I am not convinced that that God exists, that means I don't believe he exists, and that means I'm an atheist in regards to the God of the Bible.
Okay.
But if asked, if pressed, as to whether or not I know for a fact he doesn't exist, I can't say that either. Therefore, I am agnostic atheist. I don't know of any atheist that isn't an agnostic atheist. I'm sure they exist. There's somebody claiming that they know for a fact that no God exists or a God doesn't exist. But I've never seen one. All of them, the famous atheists, are all agnostic atheists. And to that point, almost all theists are agnostic theists.
Absolutely.
They are presented with, for example, the God of the Bible. They are convinced that he exists. But if pressed to say, do you know for a fact, they would say, no, I don't know for a fact. Therefore, you are an agnostic theist.
Absolutely.
So I'm an atheist, and I recognize the baggage that comes with that. I believe it's often misunderstood, unfortunately. So I don't, I understand people's tendency to want to say I'm an agnostic instead, but I try to educate as opposed to run away from it.
Okay. So, just so I can understand you, when you walk outside,
Sure.
you see the personalities of the children,
Okay.
the whole thing.
The birds and the
birds,
trees.
the
and
trees, the
thunderstorms. And
all the stuff,
yeah.
flowers.
It's beautiful.
Yeah. Nothing says perhaps a creator.
Well, I would say that I have no reason to believe that it was created.
I see.
Maybe it was.
Right. Maybe it was, but you have no reason to believe
That it was. Correct. And therefore, listen, what is the default position on anything in life? Forget religion for a second.
Okay.
But if I come to you and I say, and by the way, this is not a metaphor that I made up. This is a very common metaphor used by atheists. If I come to you and I say, I've got a box buried in my backyard with $1 million cash in it. Okay? But I can't show it to you for whatever reason. I make up a reason why I can't show it to you. Do you believe me? Do you have any reason to believe me?
I don't have any reason not to believe you.
Okay, but that's not the question. See, because that would be whether or not you know for a fact I'm lying. Okay?
Okay.
The question is whether or not you believe I'm telling the truth. And your position, if you're thinking about, if this is a serious proposition as opposed to a humorous analogy, your answer would be, well, until you show me that $1 million, I'm just not going to believe.
Right.
It doesn't mean that you are saying that the $1 million is not there.
Right. Right.
Okay? So for me, the default position on anything in life is that you don't believe it exists or it's true until proven otherwise.
Okay.
And so I used to apply that in all aspects, and most of us do. A lot of us don't realize that. But, somebody's telling us a story or we hear about something or whatever, and we're like, when I see the proof, I'll believe it. When I see it, I'll believe it.
Yeah. Right.
And we somehow don't apply that same, I've just simply started applying that to religion, which, by the way, I didn't do that immediately after leaving the church. There was a period of time where I kind of considered myself a deist. And in fact, I found your YouTube channel at the time and consumed a lot of your content and enjoyed it until I started really going away from that. And then I found some of your stuff, and not you personally, but you and all the other theist stuff a little bit hard to digest.
Sure. Let me ask you, this was in my head, listening to you about agnosticism and atheism. I can't remember what it was.
Yeah, it'll come back.
We'll go to the next thing.
Okay.
So, faith then.
Okay.
Are you like Nietzsche that faith means not wanting to know the truth?
Nah, I don't know that I would say that. No, okay. I'm not that cynical. Look, I think that, first of all, faith is what we use to justify things that we have no proof of.
Okay.
Right? Like, I want to believe there's a God, so I have faith that there's a God.
Right. And
Right.
any Christian should admit that.
Well, they don't. Most of them don't.
They should.
Okay, but they don't. Maybe you're an anomaly in that sense. I don't know. But the other thing I would say, and again, this is not an original thought of mine. This is something that is very well, articulated multiple times out there. But there's really nothing, if you think about it, that I can't believe on faith. I could believe anything on faith, right?
Sure.
If I'm just using faith,
Right.
and I'm not taking into consideration any evidence for or against, I could believe anything.
But remember the definition of faith that you gave to your mission president.
Sure.
And which is the definition which is also in...
Correct faith, or what was it? True faith requires correct knowledge.
Yeah.
But again, I think what's missing from that short snippet is this idea that, at least in Mormonism, and I don't know if your brand of Christianity would sign up for this, but I think in Mormonism, the way faith is looked at in that regard is where my knowledge ends, my faith begins, supported by that knowledge.
Okay.
Do you know what I'm saying? Have you ever heard of it in that sense?
Yeah.
That was the way I saw faith as a Mormon.
I see.
That even though it was, I was believing in something that I didn't necessarily have proof of, it was at least supported loosely by the facts.
Okay.
Maybe not conclusively.
So you do have proof that you exist, that love is important.
Sure. Okay. Yeah. I won't
Fidelity.
disagree. Sure.
These things.
Being, sort of this idea of having a moral compass.
Right.
Sure.
And so I'm just saying this for our audience because there are Christians who are just going, oh, come on, Shawn, get on him. But I don't believe
on
that.
me. Go
No,
ahead.
no, I don't believe that. I
Okay.
don't believe in getting on people. I think you have the absolute right to believe what you want and to be respected for it. Because, like, we've been talking about faith, but so you do, as someone without God in your life, as they would say, where do you draw those
Morality from myself.
From yourself.
Same place you do.
Yeah.
You being a believer,
Right.
I just believe that you're incorrectly ascribing your own personal thoughts
Right.
to God.
I see.
Here's what I would say. Let's say, well, I don't. You don't believe that, like, for example, Moses was the first person to say that you shouldn't kill somebody, right? Or do you?
Well, there could have been someone before him, sure.
Okay. Well, let's just say, for argument's sake, that Moses was the first person to do that.
All right.
Right? He comes down from the mountain and he says, God has told me that thou shalt not kill. Okay. And prior to that, that idea was a foreign idea to everybody on the earth. Let's just play this out.
Right.
Okay. Let's say that there is no God. Right? Let's say we die and we realize there is no God. Then where did that idea of not killing come from? It came from Moses himself.
Okay, sure.
And he incorrectly ascribed it. Or, if you want to take the cynical side, he created this, master to help control the masses, right? But whatever it is, it was his own original thought, assuming he's the first one, which I don't believe. But and he just ascribed it to somebody, which there's no proof to ascribe it to. So when people say, and I've heard this a lot, you can't have a moral compass without God. Well, we all have a moral compass. And in fact, your moral compass is better than your God's.
Okay, explain that.
Well, I assume that I don't want to assume. So you correct me if I'm wrong in these statements. But a lot of Christians believe in a God who sanctioned slavery at some point.
Okay.
Yet I would imagine most of those same Christians would say it's immoral to own another human being.
Okay, yes.
Therefore, their morality
I see.
is superior to their God's.
I see what you're saying.
Because even if they were to say, well, God doesn't believe that anymore, but he did at one point.
And perhaps at one point we would too.
Well, maybe, and maybe our morality would have been flawed. But today, in 2019, our morality is greater than the God of the Bible.
The God of the Old Testament.
Is that not the same God?
It just depends. We had Jesus come in between, so.
Well,
it's a whole different subject.
Yeah, I don't think it is, though.
Yeah,
I don't know.
Yeah.
But I think the Christians that I interact with, which is not by
Many.
any I don't know if it's many, but I won't suggest that they represent the broader Christian population. So maybe I'm getting a small sample size, but I think most people would say that it is the same God, and that Jesus, they usually will say something along the lines of, Jesus somehow fulfilled some whatever, and now the Old Testament stuff is out the window, however they describe it, right? But the point is, even if that were the case, there was a time when I don't know how you guys refer to God, but in Mormon context, Elohim.
Yeah.
There was a time when Elohim saw it fit for one man to own another man.
Yeah.
And I've never seen that fit, ever. So am I lucky that I lived in a time where we didn't see that? Sure, but whether that's the case or not, again, my morality is greater than Elohim's morality.
Right now, if you're comparing
Well, it's always, I've never thought that it was okay to own another human being.
But we're talking about context here, in the context of...
I don't see, okay, so context applies in this regard to a human being who could possibly, you could say, is a product of his own society. In other words, if you were born in the year, 1400 or whatever, and all of your ancestors owned slaves, and that's all you've ever known. Yes, what you're doing is wrong, but you're allowed a little bit of leeway because you didn't know any better. But those are not people who claim to have all-knowing powers and being what is the word? Omniscient, right? So sure, an individual could be a product of their time, and there's probably things, today that in 50 years would make me look like a bigot or something like that.
Sure.
And you could maybe say I was a product of my time, but I'm not claiming to be a god.
But if God is omniscient and he has the view of everything necessary and needed for that time, looking at the culture, I don't see why he could not.
Well, he can.
Yeah.
Right. But so he can, right? Because he's God, right?
That's the context.
So I would simply say then, if I die tomorrow, right, and I find out that the God of the Bible, as I understand it, is the actual God, the God that saw fit at one point to allow slavery, then I'm going to say, I want nothing to do with you.
Well, that's fair. I mean,
he's allowed to do it because he's God.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean I have to go with it.
Right.
I'm going to go hang out with my people.
All right. And I would think you'll get your wish.
Yeah, I hope so. I mean, seriously though, imagine if the Muslims are right, right? And, you go up there and I don't know all the Muslim theology, but, like this whole 72 virgin thing is real, right? Wouldn't there be people that are repugnant by that? And wouldn't they be justified in saying, I don't want anything to do with that God, even though I acknowledge he exists?
Sure.
That goes against my morality?
There would be, yes.
Would they be justified in such?
If that's their morality, they would.
So there you go.
Okay. Jesus.
A lot of people...
Historical?
I don't know and I don't care. That would be what I would say to that. I have no problem with him being a historical figure.
Did you care that he was a historical figure when you were LDS?
I never knew there was even a question as to whether or not he was historical. Again,
okay.
I didn't know that there was even a debate. I didn't even know that existed. So it was no question to me. Now I realize there's a debate. I'm not an expert in that debate. I don't know, but I have no problem if somebody says to me, Jesus was a historical figure. I have no problem with that. And in fact, he probably was.
Yeah.
But it's one thing to say that, a revolutionary existed.
Right.
A rabble rouser existed. A rebel. And it's another thing to say that he was the literal Son of God and was, killed on a cross and resurrected 3 days later.
Right.
Those are like two separate different things.
Right.
So, it's, I have no problem with historical Jesus.
Okay. So, and just one more question regarding that, which is something that's important to me and the way I see it, is that, him and his resurrection and all that, who knows, but it's the 12 guys that Josephus and the other secular writers talk about that went out and were martyred for their witness of the resurrection that make me wonder.
Like, why would they be so dedicated?
Yeah, alone.
September 11th.
Yeah, but they were...
What's the difference?
Truly?
Sure.
September 11th?
Sure. I believe those guys believed they were doing the will of God.
But they blew up a building. These guys, they died at the hands of others.
Yes, but in their world,
that
was sincerely what their God was asking them to do.
So you would ascribe it to they were brainwashed.
Sure.
Okay.
Don't you think they were?
No.
You don't think that the Muslim extremists that take the interpretation that extreme are brainwashed?
I'm talking about the apostles.
Oh, the apostles.
Yeah.
Well, no, that's not what I'm not saying they were brainwashed. And they may have been. What I'm saying is that a person's dedication to a cause is not an indication to the truthfulness or value of that cause. Because people are dedicated and true believers in all kinds of causes that are toxic.
Yeah. And in those groups, they typically are, but when you compare a group and the groupthink, and what the Carino in Japan with the sarin gas, they're a group. But you talk about a guy like Paul who had everything, and he goes out for most of his life alone, doing what he does, suffering immeasurably, and then dying for it. I don't get the motive.
First of all, I mean, I would have to say that like maybe all that stuff happened.
Okay.
Right. I
mean,
mean,
we'll defer to that one.
Yeah. I mean, it's like you say, like, you talk about Paul as if we have like his autobiography or something like that. I mean, yeah, there's these claims that this guy Paul existed that did all these things, but I mean, do we really know? I mean, a lot of these biblical texts were written decades after.
Let's just play the game that he did. Because,
sure.
Fine. Even higher critics will say, yeah, Paul was pretty much. So let's say he did. What's the motivation?
Well, I don't know. I mean, maybe he had, he was working with the information he had. Okay. I won't doubt that he was a true believer, assuming, the general story is true, that there was a Jesus and this guy was a true follower, and was a follower to the extent that he was willing to die for his belief. Sure.
Sacrifice everything.
Sure. Yeah. When I was in high school, there was that group that committed suicide for the Hale-Bopp comet.
Yeah.
They believed.
Again, their the group.
Jim Jones, the group? Kool-Aid, drink the Kool-Aid. But you're talking about 12 guys. How many people did Jim Jones convince?
No, I'm talking about 12 individuals going and suffering and dying alone. I think there's a difference in that. The groupthink will always...
It just, look, I think if I had time to prepare for it, I probably could find you more people that went and died and suffered individually for other causes that you don't believe in. Yeah. And that you wouldn't find their suffering as any evidence. Like, to me, the fact that...
I would like to hear those. If you can do it.
Okay, I mean, I'll
get
shoot
dinner
you an
on me
email.
next time we see each other.
I'm guessing that I could find them. I don't know for a fact.
I would love to see the comparison.
Listen, the long story short of it, though, and I think it's a good point that you bring up, because Mormons bring this up. They say, well, they'll bring it up in a couple different contexts. So first of all, Joseph Smith. Joseph Smith was willing to die for his religion.
No, he was shooting back.
Well, I understand in the moment, right? That's what that was. Yeah. But Joseph Smith had many opportunities before then to reverse course and say, you know what? I better, this might end up getting me killed. Let me stop seeking out these child brides.
A lot of chicks. He got money. He had his.
All right, you're bringing up all these reasons why his apparent devotion.
Right.
Is invalid.
I just want to know I want to know the apparent devotion of Paul. That's what I'm asking.
Yeah, well, we don't know.
All right.
So I can't go off of the apparent devotion of somebody who might have lived 2,000 years ago.
Right.
I can't go and base my life off of that.
Right.
Like I said, maybe we die. Listen, my philosophy is, if I go about life doing what I can do to be a good person and making amends where I need to make amends and doing my best, which I will fall short of, right? But if there is a God, he would know whether or not I'm truly doing my best.
Sure he would.
And I feel like I am going through life trying to do my best. And if I die and I go and God says to me, well, if it's the Mormon God and he says, oh, you drank some coffee, no soup for you.
Right.
Well, I'm going to say, great, I didn't want your soup to begin with. Right? But if it's, the general Christian God of the Bible and he says, well, you didn't invite Jesus into your heart or whatever it is. And I'm going to say, really? That's the thing. Like I tried to do all this good stuff and here's some murderer behind me that accepted Jesus into his heart after committing murder and he gets in and I don't. I don't want any part in that. See, that's the thing to me is even if it's true, I want no part of it.
I get it. I get your logic.
Yeah.
I do. I'm glad you're sharing it.
Good.
Purpose of life.
There is no purpose to life. I mean, purpose is what we make of it.
Okay.
You make your own purpose. All right. I don't believe there's like this grand sort of general purpose of life that we're all seeking. You have passions in your life, and if you pursue those in a wholesome manner, that becomes your purpose.
I see. If you pursue them in a wholesome manner.
in a wholesome being, just a catch-all word for, you're not, if your passion is like, being a serial killer, then, I'm not going to really get on board with that purpose of your life.
What if it's banging as many chicks as you can?
Sure.
Sure.
If you're not...
No matter if it hurts them, their feelings.
Well, okay. That you didn't say that. You said having sex with as many women as you can.
And I'm adding that.
You're adding. Well,
I'm adding that. It's a predatory lifestyle.
Listen, well, then of course not.
No?
But I don't think it has to be predatory.
Okay.
I think if you're, let's take the case of a single person first.
Okay.
And you're not sort of in a committed relationship with somebody.
Okay.
I think that it is possible for that person to responsibly enjoy sexual activity without it being predatory in any way. Okay.
With as many partners as possible.
Sure. Okay. If that's what they want to do.
Total truth.
That's not my thing, but that's not. Right. Now, if you're in a committed relationship with somebody, now if it's an open relationship where that's sort of like been defined and allowed, then I suppose, I don't know, I think that's probably the rare occasion. I do believe that if you have committed to somebody, then as part of being a good person is to honor that commitment. And if you've reached a point in your life where you're ready to go, you want to have sex with other people, then it's probably time for a divorce, as opposed to trying to get it on the side without the other person knowing.
That's part of the excitement.
I don't think that that's a worthy endeavor. I'm not saying people can't do it, but it's not. Yeah, I think that that's a mark against your character.
I see.
I'm not going to say it makes you a horrible person, because we've all done bad things. Nobody's all good or all bad. But if you are actively seeking out opportunities to be unfaithful to your spouse, I see that as a lack of character.
Okay. So let me ask you this. I have no character, and I say that with all honesty. I would bang as many chicks as possible being married.
Okay.
And
you would, but you don't.
I would, and I don't.
Okay.
Now I don't.
You went through a period of time where you did.
Sure. Yeah.
Okay.
And I beat the shit out of anybody who disagreed with me.
Yeah.
And I would take illicit drugs, and I would steal.
Yeah.
And I would do whatever I possibly could to feed myself.
Yeah.
I didn't have
your
no
morality. A nihilist or what?
Yeah, I was at a time.
Yeah.
So
I actually know somebody. I have a friend who, he wasn't beating people, but he had no moral compass when it came to cheating on his wife, for example.
Yeah, and neither did I. I had none.
Yeah.
So
are you proud of that?
Oh, not at all.
Well,
not
there
at
you
all.
go.
But it is me. So here's why I'm drawing the line, because you say I can go to ourselves to discover what we want to choose. We go to ourselves, and I'll tell you right now, that is not a pretty picture in my case. Well, and if we go to the point of the mountain, it's not a pretty picture there either.
You have the right to choose your path in life, short of doing harm to others, right? It's like one of those.
But who writes that?
Well, as a society.
What about Marx? Might makes right. I mean, where do we have
I don't agree with that. I mean, we have to work as a society to come up with a collective agreement where we can. And
I say bullshit. I say no way. Yeah. I want to dominate you. I want what you have.
And I suppose if I were to allow it, then I guess it becomes allowed.
Wow.
I mean, there would be situations like that, right?
But my point is, it's great if you're a good guy. Like, I've seen character in you.
Sure.
And you're showing character, and you say fidelity to your wife's good. But what about all the people who don't have that character innately?
Okay, that's something they got to work on. They're going to have to suffer the consequences.
Aren't others going to suffer the consequences?
Sure, that's life. Life is pain.
Yeah.
Life is pain. That's another thing I learned after leaving the church. I used to think, what's the Mormon scripture? And I don't know if there's an equivalent in the Bible that Christians adhere to.
I don't think so.
You know what I'm talking about, where man was made for joy, or whatever it is. Yeah, you know what I mean? And I think that's one of the problems in Mormonism, is you're led to believe that if you're not having joy in life, something's wrong. And I learned, and I think this is like a Buddhist principle, but
it is.
This idea that in order to find true joy, you must experience pain. And I truly believe that. And so I'm not saying the pain is good. I'm not saying the pain should be sought after, but it is what it is. And you deal with it as it comes. Right. So if you have a spouse that has chosen to cheat on you, it doesn't mean you sit back and say, well, they've chosen that path in life. No, they've caused you pain, and now you must deal with it. And you can deal with it however you want. If you want to stay with your spouse and forgive them and work through it, do it. If you want to divorce them, do it. Right? There is fallout from the actions of the cheating spouse.
Of course.
So I don't think this idea, and I think what you're getting at, and correct me if I'm wrong, I think what you're getting at is that religion provides a framework for that serial cheater to sort of harness that, those negative actions and sort of find a purpose in life.
With one correction.
Okay.
Jesus, not religion.
Okay, fine.
Religion
because you don't like the organizations. Okay, fair enough. So, and what I'm saying is that, okay, you, from what I'm gathering, you were engaging in these out of control behaviors, and Jesus is what caused you to rein them in.
Yes, daily.
Okay.
Even today.
All right. If Jesus doesn't exist, if you die tomorrow and find out, oh, I was wrong.
Right.
Then who actually reined in those behaviors?
Well, if Jesus doesn't, then the idea of Jesus did. Okay. And my application of the idea to myself.
And so I would simply say that you can rein yourself in without Jesus if you really wanted to.
And I would say that is fucking impossible.
Well, I don't believe that.
Yeah. Well, all you got to do is visit the prisons, brother, and talk to my wife who knew me for so many years before Jesus.
Yeah.
There was nothing, no court, nothing that would stop my behavior.
Well,
so that's why I'm so convinced of the power of
Well, you've
Christ.
had a personal experience.
Right.
It's
subjective.
That has convinced you of this higher being, Jesus in this case, who has touched your life. And the problem is that you might be wrong, right?
Let it be wrong.
And your anecdotal evidence doesn't apply to anybody else.
No, it doesn't.
And so that's the problem.
No,
right?
It's not a problem. I mean,
well, it's the problem when you're trying to convince somebody else. And I'm not saying you're trying to convince me.
Right. No, I'm not. Yeah.
But like a statement like that of saying, like if somebody comes to me and says, Jesus effectuated this change in my life, well, I'm going to just simply say, well, I mean, what good does that do me?
Right.
Let him effectuate whatever change I need in my life then.
Right.
I mean, he has the power to do it, I guess.
And if you don't have, that comes back to the faith thing.
Right.
But if you don't have anything that you feel Jesus needs to effectuate,
and I'm
you're
not
fine.
saying that, by the way. I'm not saying in the sense that I'm not saying that I've solved all of life's moral questions and I'm some great moral pillar. Of course I always tell anybody who Ryan McKnight, he's so thankful. If you need some negative things to say about me, just call my wife. I'm sure she'll tell you all my flaws.
Sure.
So of course I have flaws. I mean, I've never cheated on my wife.
Yeah.
Or beat up somebody or whatever it is you were talking about.
Right.
But that doesn't mean I haven't done other things that I'm ashamed of.
Sure.
So, but I mean, the desire to not do those things, whatever those things are, is something that I'm not convinced that you need the idea of Jesus for.
Right. See, what I'm trying to get to with you here is that within Mormonism, we have a great body of people who were kind of like you, where you were a good guy pretty much.
Yeah. I didn't do the wrong things I did in my life are pale in comparison to most people.
Right.
Yeah.
And so when you come to find out that Mormonism lied to you the whole time, the natural kickback is, I'm a good guy, forget religion, forget God, I can do it on my own. And that's usually what we're seeing in here. That's why John's so popular. Yeah. Because he speaks to the people who are like,
who never really they were already good people, generally speaking.
Right.
Yeah.
And it leads to, I will say this, I can't prove it, to an atheism.
Yeah. Well, I think that probably I would agree. Can't prove it like you, but my observation is that most ex-Mormons gravitate toward atheism. I don't think it's just because of what you said. I think that's a contributing factor, but I think most of the reason that I see is because Mormonism is such a black and white religion.
Oh yeah.
That was it for me. Like I never examined morality and religion's part in morality when I was going through my faith transition. For me, it was like, well, if Mormonism isn't true, then nothing's true. Because I mean,
of course,
the Bible thumpers are definitely wrong. I already know that.
Yeah,
you know what I mean.
Yeah. So I get that.
That I think is the bigger hurdle when it comes to Mormonism is this black and white thinking. Whereas a lot of evangelicals, I know there are some hardcore evangelicals that are black and white as well, but a lot of Christians will adhere to their denomination, but also recognize that there are other valid denominations out there. And so it lends more to they leave one and go to another.
Yeah.
And
Mormons scorched earth.
Yeah. And I mean, I guess I'm grateful for that because, I mean, from where I sit, I would prefer to be an atheist. So, I mean, I'm glad, but I mean, I can understand the frustration from people like you who see that maybe where I've landed is being the fault of Mormonism. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. We're all the product of what, our upbringing and our culture to a certain extent.
Yeah.
But I just think that God or Jesus's effect on people's lives is, not only is it anecdotal, but it's largely exaggerated and misunderstood and often confused for just life.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Just like the story I told in the earlier part of the check that I mysteriously got in the mail that really wasn't that mysterious, but I ascribed a mysterious thing to it.
So looking back to those 3 spiritual experiences in part 1, what do you say now? Circumstantial?
Well,
Life.
Yeah. Life is all about emotion. There's something called, what is it called? Frisson. You can look it up. This is where you're watching that movie. You're watching Saving Private Ryan, and you get to that last scene, and you're bawling, right? And your hair is standing up. That's frisson.
Yeah, and Mormonism preys on that.
Yeah, and so when you feel this, like when I felt the Spirit, I felt this. I just don't think it's the Spirit anymore. I just think it was life.
Right.
It was. Listen, when I was at the sentencing hearing today, which I talked about in one of the previous parts, I was crying in there. The moment the victim's mother started speaking, that wasn't the Spirit. And it was a similar type thing, this warmth and this,
But it's life.
That was life. It was an emotional experience.
See, my friend, I know all Christians are different, and I can't say anything about their rock shows and their emotionalism. Right. But we strip emotionalism out of it because it is too manipulative. That. Yeah, we just try to look at. One question for.
By the way, I don't look at religion as something that needs to be abolished. So, I don't look at. Is this called the campus church? Is that what we call it? So I don't look at the campus church and say, "Man, I hope that doesn't exist one day."
Oh, okay.
I don't look at that.
Yeah.
I say, as long as you don't tell me what to do, I won't tell you what to do.
Right. And I would agree with you on that completely. Yeah. And I don't tell them what to do.
Well, that's even, and that, I mean, that in my book, assuming that you're accurately portraying your church,
I am.
And you're not just blowing smoke up whatever. But then I would say that it puts you in a camp that few are in.
Yeah.
And I think that if more people took that approach, we probably would be in a better place in terms of, the us versus them that often happens.
We are working on that.
Yeah. I have one of my closest friends, if possibly my best friend, is an active Mormon. Probably to the surprise of many people.
Wow.
Especially if you have some Mormons, they'll say, how is this possible? Yeah. And he's a great guy.
Sure.
And, he probably is not like as orthodox as some members, but he goes to church every Sunday and pays his tithing. Okay, and his kids are being raised to go on missions.
Wow.
But you know what? He has never once judged me. I would get a little emotional. And I've said before, if more people were like him, there would be no Mormon leaks. There would be no Truth and Transparency Foundation. There would be no ex-Mormon Reddit. There would just be people that go to church and there'd be people that don't.
I'm right on that train with you. That guy is a true Christian.
Yeah.
The evangelicals won't let me say that, but they can go to hell. They are wrong. Those Mormons who are that way are true Christians. The people who love are true Christians.
Yeah.
So.
And it's unfortunate that there aren't more people like him in Mormonism. But what are we going to do?
In time. One thing for our audience, I just want the mean evangelicals, is what we call them, to hear from you as a former Mormon. What do you think of the people who are outside General Conference wearing devil suits and screaming with signs?
Wasting their time.
Thank you. Thank you. This is a former Mormon. He's been there. Don't do it.
Played zero in my leaving Mormonism. In
Zero.
fact, if anything, it probably prolonged
Kept you in it, yeah.
Because when I read things online that were true, I thought about those crazy people out there and this is just the online version of what is at General Conference.
Exactly.
So,
exactly.
yeah.
And you just said it too, Ryan. You said, I'm not going to biblical evangelicalism. That was out because of those examples.
Yeah.
And what you read online.
And, you know, I think from what I've seen, and I don't live in Utah, so, you know, my ear to the ground is as close as I can get, you know, is through the internet. So, but it seems like there are some ex-Mormon groups popping up, you know, in this vein of protesting at General Conference. I think they're wasting their time too.
Yeah. All the protests like that are wasting
Well, I don't know that I would go that far, but I am, you know, look,
well, I mean, if
people want to protest, they should protest, but if they want to be strategic about it, they're going about it the wrong way.
Yeah. That's what I
mean. You know, so.
Can I read my writing? Listen, well, we're out of time. This has been fascinating. You are
this was fun. I'm
articulate.
glad.
You are. I respect you greatly.
Oh, I appreciate
your beliefs, and because you stand for them, you live by them, and I
try.
Our forum. And I'm going to say my final thing, and then you get the final say.
All right.
To petition the audience.
Sure.
But I just want to say that after, you know, many years, I used to watch the show of studying that darn book that people don't like. I have come to see, and I'm not alone in this, it's done. The hell thing is done. It was all, there was a cluster, it was a mess in that book, but I think you're his. I don't think God hates you. I don't think Jesus, none of that stuff. I don't think any of that is related to religion or afterlife. And I just want to say that as a Christian, that I think in my way, you're not your way, but my way, he took care of everything for everybody, and it doesn't matter, right? So that's all I wanted to say. My final point to you.
I think the best possible outcome for me would be that if there is a God, is that he's like what you describe, and he says, yeah, you know, all that stuff that was in the Bible, you know, that wasn't me, and there was nothing I could do about it for whatever reason, you know, and it, you know, really ends up being maybe he wasn't an intercessory God, and you know, he is a little bit more what we would expect of a God. But yeah, look, one of the things that I think is important for us is to work to get rid of the stigma of the fact that an atheist, two atheists, because Ethan, who does this site with me, is also an atheist, are reporting on religion, and how that is an inherently starting from a position of distrust. And my plea to people who believe, whether they're Mormons or evangelicals or whatever type of, you know, believer in God, is that forget the fact that I'm an atheist for a moment and how much that bothers you, and read our content. And forget who wrote it, and read it, and decide whether or not it's worthwhile. And I think most people, when you really get down to it and you say, should religions be more open about their finances? Should religions take better steps in dealing with sexual abuse? Should religions be more open and honest about their policies and procedures so people can know what to expect when they've committed such, you know, acts that are seen as going against the organization? You know, things like this. Does the public have a right to know? And the answer is invariably yes. And the difference, what stops those believers who say yes to those questions from fully supporting our organization is that they think that we're trying to destroy religion, and we're not. Not only do I not want to destroy religion, I don't believe I have the power to do so even if I wanted to. Right. So I believe that our work, our reporting, makes religion stronger. And might people leave their churches on the way because they find something out? Maybe. So what? They're probably going to leave anyway at some point. You know, but knowledge is power. And the more you know, even if it's about your church, it gives you more power. And if anything, you know, if your church is legitimately doing good things, I say your church, the person reading our content. Right. If their church is doing good things, they have nothing to be ashamed of. And that doesn't mean they're not doing anything wrong, but what it means is when it's discovered that they're doing something wrong, they respond in an appropriate manner. Right. And that's what we're after. We are after truth and transparency. We are not after tearing down religion. And if there's anything I would like for Christians or any people, any faith to understand, and that's it. And so, like, I came here. I knew that you're a believer. I didn't necessarily know how liberal of a believer you were. I thought you were maybe more of a literalist. I learned that today. But nonetheless, I knew you were a believer in God, and I had no problem coming and sitting down here, and you had no problem talking to me. And there's no reason why this type of interaction can't happen between me and any other believer. And for me to say to somebody, well, you wrote this bad story about, you hurt these people. And I said, well, really? I'm not the one that did it. They're the one that did it. We reported on it. You should support that.
I'm going to break my rule. I'll give you the last word.
Okay.
But I have to say, I would trust your view far more than an evangelical or a Mormon or somebody who's in the faith to vet the problems of a religion. Because if you just want to see, unless you have an axe to grind, and that will come out.
Sure.
But if you're just reporting on the facts, I would say you're the best person to report on.
And that's why I say read the content. Because if I have an axe to grind, you'll see it in the content. Right. As opposed to assuming it because I sat up here for an hour justifying my atheism. Right? That has nothing to do, like you're not going to read, don't go join this church or all religions should burn down now because this person did this. Like that doesn't exist on our website. Right. And so, look, I appreciate what you said, that you would look to somebody like me and trust you more. And believe me, that is appreciated. And it would be awesome if more people saw it that way. But the reality is that people go into things with preconceived notions. And before reading our content or getting to know me like this, they just assume that I'm writing the story because I want to burn whatever organization I'm reporting about down. And so the well has been poisoned. Right. The well has been poisoned. Yeah. So we're trying to break through that. I mean, it's hard, it's slow. We've made breakthroughs like just this here. I think this is good. And, I think if people see this and maybe they realize that, not all atheists bite or whatever, it's like, I don't care if people are religious. Like I said, just don't tell me I have to be. Right. And I respect that. Truth and Transparency.org. Yes. Truthandtransparency.org. Check it out. Follow me. I'm on Facebook. We're on Twitter. I don't do Twitter that much, but we have Twitter accounts that get used. Reach out to us. Drop us a note. Tell us your story. If you've got something you want to get out there, we can evaluate it. I can't promise everybody that contacts us we're going to do a story. Right. But you're not going to. Don't worry about. Some people worry. Well, I don't want to waste your time. How am I ever going to find things out if I don't listen? Yeah. Awesome. So reach out. So good having you. Love those tats. Okay, I love yours too. Appreciate your insights. And join us next week, Tom Stalling, for 2 parts here on Heart of the Matter. Woo!